I feel like I was the only one who turned on camera throughout the whole semester. 80% of the classmates, I don't think I know their face. I never heard their voice. If I run into them in person, I wouldn't know they're my classmates for the whole semester. Why we don't have any domestic students in my classes? I mean, shouldn't there be at least 50% international students and 50% domestic students? I mean, this should be the most fun and adventurous and free moment of your life, but instead you choose to do online class. What the hell? Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Billy. I know I haven't updated anything about my study in Australia for a long time. Well, that's because my first semester just ended and I finally had some time to have holidays and relax. But now the second semester already started. I thought it's about time for me to summarize everything I've been through during the first semester online and tell you guys why I don't recommend you to do online classes. Personally, I already applied for program leave, which means I won't be doing online classes from this semester. But if you're really planning to do so, I just want you to make sure you know all the risks and the potential difficulty that you may run into so you can be more prepared. So let's get on to it. The first thing I want to talk about is how difficult it is to study online academically. Well, overall, I think it's much more difficult, and especially for those who have never studied abroad before, like in Western universities. For example, me, it just makes everything so much harder because everything will be so new to you. You don't know the system, you don't know how things run, you don't really know anybody in school, and it's really hard for you to make real connections with friends or your professors in school. So most of the time I had to figure everything out by myself. If you watched my previous video about the orientation week, you would know that it's not as good as the offline ones. And now I think about it, I think the academic training, they were pretty fine. I think they're just as good as the normal ones. But the biggest two problems for the orientation week is, number one, the major event for all the clubs, they were not put online, which means like as online students, I couldn't join any clubs if I don't like just go into their website and talk to people who's in charge of it. And I won't know anything about the clubs. So that makes it really difficult to make any friends in school. And also, there were some socializing events online, but I don't really think you make it like a real connections with people. Even though if you add them online, like for example, Facebook, you'll be just chatting like for a few sentences, and then if you don't really like click, it would just be an online friends for you for the whole semester. I didn't attend the orientation week for semester 2, so I don't know if it's anything better, but I do remember all these friends I talked to during my orientation week. I never really like talked to them throughout the whole semester, and let alone being close friends to them. I just think people forget about each other if it's online because it doesn't feel like a real connection. The second problem is I think they provided us with very little guidance for my degree and my courses specifically. Well, I remember we only had like one short Q&A section with the course convener, but nobody really asked many questions. Well, I did because I knew I was going to take a gap year if the border doesn't open. But apart from that, I knew very little about the pathway of my degree and what kind of courses I should be taking, and also what it's like for each course. And that became a big problem when I actually taking the courses. For example, I didn't know how the workload would be like, and I didn't know how the system is like running like online courses because everything's new to me. And also, I didn't know what is expected to take the course. A friend told me that I would know everything from week 1, but even until I started the course, the lecturer didn't tell us much. So I felt so left behind by most classmates because this is my first time studying abroad and my language level wasn't that good. So a lot of things I have to figure out by making mistakes, but by the time I make everything right, I'm just so left behind, and that caused me so much trouble at first because I just keep on ignoring things and forgetting things. I have to like study really, really hard to catch things up. Also, at that time, I thought, yeah, maybe I can try some more clubs or events, and that's how I was left behind by most classmates. And then I had to like just focus on my study, and I kind of just like stopped doing all these other events or the clubs. Yeah, I think if I knew how the workload would be like, I would be consider my schedule like again. So I wish someone would tell me before I started the course, because I'm a first-time international student. How would I know like everything's gonna be so difficult for me? I think they kind of assumed us as the students who have already had a bachelor degree for 3 years in Australia, who already knew the system, and now we're master students, we're supposed to know everything, and I guess that's not the case for most international students. Another big mistake I made during the first half of the semester was I didn't connect with the professors as much as I should. Well, I was a bit shy, and also I didn't know like I should like keep a close contact with them through emails and consultation. As I mentioned, I was like a bit left behind with all the coursework, so I thought I should figure everything out by myself first before I go to the consultation. Like in my mind, I should have like a bunch of really good questions before I book a time like individually with the professors. Otherwise, I feel like if I ask stupid questions, it'll be a waste of time for him, and I feel too bad for that. And I realized that's totally a big mistake, because the first one you need to contact if you have any problems during the course is the lecturer. But that wasn't the case for me at first. Well, I think that's partially my fault, because I'm not used to the email and consultation system online. But I also think if everything was offline, for example, if you're taking lecture offline with the lecturer, it would be so much easier just to talk to them like during the lecture or after the lecture, and you will see them all the time. And it would just be easier to ask like a quick stupid question, so you don't have to really write an email or book a consultation with them to deal with some like small problems. But my suggestion is that, even if you think you have stupid questions, people ask them all the time. Just make sure you do ask those questions to your lecturers before you like made any mistakes and wasted your time. Another vital problem for communication with the professors online is that you cannot show any emotion. Like for example, if you're emailing your lecturers and you want to tell them how urgent you are, that really usually doesn't make sense through the text. And if you really book a consultation with them, they don't really have the time to comfort you and support you emotionally. Most of the time they will say, hurry up, I had a lot of students waiting in the line, so you'll be just asking your questions as quickly as possible. And when your important questions were asked and answered, you just go offline. And that's impossible to make any personal connection with a professor. And I think that makes it harder for a lot of students, because a lot of us still young and immature. We're 22, 23. We may not have work experience before. And as international students, we may not speak English as our first language. So sometimes it can be still a little scary to talk to the professors. And if we don't have any personal connection with them, I don't think we would talk to them as much as we could. Now think about it, the only academic staff that we're close to as online students are the lecturers. Because we see each other all the time. We have this workshop every week, and we email each other and have consultation time. And we can really make some personal connection with each other. Apart from that, the other academic staff, like the course convener, the degree convener, the student service team, they're people who we turn to when we have a problem. We email each other and get the problem done. Nothing is personal. So I think the professors, lecturers, can really do better by making the workshop more engaging and try to remember students' name and be more nice and patient in the consultation, because you're the only academic staff that we can turn to when we have academic problems or sometimes even emotional problems. And as students, I strongly suggest you to talk to your professors as often as you can, because sometimes the workload can be overwhelming and assignments can be very difficult. And don't think that you can solve everything out by yourself. If you have questions, no matter you think it's stupid or it's a good question, just ask your professors and get it done as soon as you can, because otherwise when you feel left behind, you feel terrible, and I assure you that your assignment will be not good if you do it in a rush. And thirdly, I think this is a big problem for me personally, is the lack of peer support. I always like to rely on my classmates during my academic career. I like to ask them questions and get support from them. But I realized it was almost impossible during the online semester. And as I said, it was really hard to make any close connection with the classmates. And even if we make friends online, we add each other on Facebook, we were just texting each other off class a little bit. Nothing was really detailed. It's just impossible for us to get into any deep topic like if we're texting on Facebook. An interesting fact is that I think most of the classmates, if not all, in my mandatory courses were international students just like me. Like, I don't think they ever studied in Australia before. They're also new to the system and they are probably struggling with their English level too. So I couldn't really get like any good advice from them, like we're all on the same boat. This leads to another problem, which is why we don't have any domestic students in my classes. I mean, shouldn't there be at least 50% international students and 50% domestic students? I feel like I went to an international school, not an Australian university. Like, I only knew one domestic student throughout the whole semester. And the reason for that is because I chose him as my group mate randomly in one of my elective classes. Well, I think domestic students are really important for the courses because they represent the academic level of the master's degree in Australian universities. Like, obviously, they speak perfect English, and I feel like they're much more willing to be engaged and also to speak up during the courses. Like, they're obviously used to the educational system there, so it would be nice to have them in my study group so I can get some peer support from them. So I won't be so lost all the time. Well, on the other hand, in my classes, I don't know if they were too shy or if they were not confident with their English level, but during most of the discussion time, it was so quiet and nobody would like turn on their camera. I feel like I was the only one who turned on camera throughout the whole semester and who liked to speak up and answer the lecturer's questions. Of course, there are few of my classmates who like to speak up, and I know all of them, but the rest 80% of the classmates, I don't think I know their face. I never heard their voice. If I run into them in person, I wouldn't know they're my classmates for the whole semester. That's how awkward it was. And I totally expect more from the world top university like NU, and I expect to improve myself more with the classmates, but that's totally not the case. And the second big topic is social isolation. If I watched my previous video, you would know how bad I was throughout the semester. It was really hard for me to not be able to hang out with people who are the same age with me and like who share the same value and interest. Basically, I'm locked at home the whole time with my family. Yes. So I used to study and work in Shanghai for many years, so most of my friends are there, but I have to move back to Chengdu to do online classes because I don't have any income and I live with my parents now. I don't really have any friends here because I live in the suburbs, and most of my old friends, they're either not in Chengdu anymore or they're just, I don't hang out with them anymore. And also the workload was so heavy, so I was basically studying all the time. If you have friends living in the same city with you while you're studying online, that's nice, but just so you know, it's different because you're still studying by yourself. You don't have like classmates studying with you. And most of the time, you'll be probably like overwhelmed by all the workload and you don't really have time to go out and hang out with your friends. Yeah, even if you do have time, they may not understand what you're going through and they do not know what advice to provide you and what kind of emotional support they give. It's very different from your classmates. I remember back in my bachelor's degree, I had this really close friend as my roommate. At first we didn't click, but we went through so many things together, like all the classes, all the trouble, how we helped each other. And that's really nice because there's always someone who's doing the same thing with you, who understands you and who will help you and give you advice. That's just not the case when you're doing online classes because the only people who are doing the same thing with you are online, and if you're lucky enough to make friends with them, the only connection would be like some texting, or you may like video call with each other. That just feels distance. It's not really the same as you're doing the same thing together offline, trust me. Another big problem for online study is that you don't really get to know new people or try new things or have a great college experience. I mean, isn't the whole point of going to college and study abroad of making new friends, trying new things, experiencing new culture, having adventures, like going for trips, and most importantly, being free and being a better version of you. But that's just not the case when you're studying online. You're basically locked in a cage if you're studying online, and you don't get any of the experience that you should get as a college student. I mean, this should be the most fun and adventurous and free moment of your life, but instead you choose to do online class. What the hell? I mean, yeah, I wouldn't do it. That's why I'm taking a program leave, because I want my college life to be so much better than what I experienced. Last but definitely not the least, there can be a lot of problems with the place you choose to study while you're taking online classes. While you may not realize it until you start the online class by yourself, but yeah, in my experience, it's really hard to find a nice place. If we're in campus, of course there are like nice classrooms, libraries, dorm room, or anywhere. It's just so quiet and nice and perfect for study. But in reality, if you're studying like online, it's a big problem. And I think that's the reason people want to rent a nice office or trying so hard to find the local library to study. Because, for example, if you try to study in your apartment, you know, there can be a lot of things people will do in the daytime. For example, renovation. There can be like raining all the time. I heard like baby crying, children playing outside, people having arguments upstairs, whatever. It's just so annoying, and sometimes when I tried to focus on study and I was so annoyed by all these things, I couldn't focus at all, and that just made more pressure for me. And yeah, if you're lucky enough, you'll find a local library next to you, but that's not always the case, because I know a lot of my classmates, they don't have like a nice library close to them, so yeah, they're forced to study at home or find a cafe. But do you think the cafe is nice? Tell you what, the cafe around me, they're always so noisy, and they would play music and there were people coming and going. It's not the perfect place for study. If you can afford to live by yourself, that's perfect, but in many cases, if you have to move back to live with your parents, you have to really think twice about that. Because in my case, I have lived with my parents for almost 6-7 years, and suddenly I have to move back. I thought it was nice because I don't have to pay the rent finally, and we can support each other as a family. But then we realized how much we've changed through the years. I grew up to be a more independent person, but they still think I'm a baby, and sometimes it can be a little bit control freak. They're better now, but still I think we have totally different lifestyle and we may have different routines, and they may not understand what I'm going through because they never studied like online before, obviously. And there's a time difference. I remember one time I had to wake up at 5, like early in the morning. I remember it was really cold, so I have to turn the AC on. But that kind of wake my dad up, and he got so upset. He stormed in my room saying, I'm wasting electricity by using the AC the whole day. I mean, isn't that normal to use AC while it's cold? I just don't get it. Like, different generations. There are so many things they don't get us, and I don't get them. And because I'm so overwhelmed by my schoolwork all the time, I don't always have the best face, and I don't always speak like so nice and friendly to them, and that just can trigger a lot of problems between family and I. Lastly, I know a lot of you are finishing high school or your bachelor's degree and you don't want to work, so you want to go straight to the next level of your study. But after watching this video, I hope you really think twice before you do online classes, because you may have a terrible experience. And I don't think there's a problem of having a gap year. Like, seriously, you can do so many things. You don't necessarily have to like work full time. You can travel, you can do your own things. Like me, I'm doing social media. It's just a time that you can be free and try new things. And I think this is a great opportunity because you have the right reason to take a gap year now. For those who have already studied semester 2 online, I'm sorry I didn't update this video like earlier so you could have a second thought, but I hope you get more prepared of what's coming. And I will soon update another video about the tips studying online. I hope that will help you a little. So make sure you subscribe to my channel for the upcoming videos about studying in Australia as an international student. And if you like this video, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up. And if you have any questions for me or what you want to hear in the future, leave in the comments and I'll answer you as soon as possible. I hope to see you on the next one. Bye!